Hi folks, Councilman Rasmussen here, coming to you with an update from our Smyrna Town Council meeting from last night, Monday, March 18th. Coming to you from my car this time because I'll mention a little bit more about it, but down in Dover for a training for the entire day, so couldn't get this done from my office this morning. I've missed the last council meeting. I was on vacation down in Florida with my kids, so you missed a month there. You missed a meeting from that one. The big news from that one was moving forward with the first of the two rezonings, the major rezonings, state or townwide rezonings that we're doing. A lot of work has been going into it. It was the first of two. That was really the big news from the last council meeting. As far as this council meeting, I know for folks who have been watching the council meetings, the budget has been a big piece that has been on our agenda over and over. It was on our agenda again for this meeting. However, we had some council members who did not want to talk about it. So things got a bit contentious around just passing the agenda, because it's a very big and very important thing, and it needs to be talked about, and unfortunately folks didn't want to do that last night. So again, the budget work was punted. We are supposed to have a special meeting next week, is what we're scheduling now, to go over it another time, and try and bring people up to speed and help people understand some of the budget challenges that we have. They've not changed. The issues are the same that we have. I intend on doing a much longer video specifically discussing that when I get the opportunity to do so, and when we actually have a budget to fully talk about. But there's a lot of challenges, and those are going to amount to significant financial impacts for our community, both in the near term, in how we operate, and in the long term, in how we go about planning for the future, especially future capital needs of the town. There's going to be a lot to it. Unfortunately, I hoped we would talk about it last night at the council meeting, but that didn't happen. So more to come. On the council meeting from last night, we did have a couple of sort of procedural things that needed to get done around the election. So every year when we have an election, we have to do a couple of things. One is we have to appoint the Board of Election, so members from our community who volunteer to serve as the election board, to oversee the election. And then we also have to set the list of candidates. These are the people who have applied to run for the positions that are open, and have met the qualifications that are necessary from that. Basically, you have to live in the town of Smyrna for a year, I believe is up to it. Relatively low qualifications. It's not terribly tough if you live in town and you'd like to run, probably can. We are two districts that are up for election this year. One is District 3, and one is one of the at-large districts. There are two people running for District 3, and I believe 3 people running for the at-large district. So we had to certify that list of folks, which is, really just saying, yep, here's the people who are running. And then we set the Meet the Candidates night. So I believe that's going to be April 8th at, I think we said 5:30, but it could have been 6 o'clock in Town Council. That's an opportunity to go out, talk to folks who are running, ask them questions, see what it's all about. And I hope that if you're in town that day, you can go ahead and do that. I know that I will not be, because that is the day of the solar eclipse, and we're going to be taking my family to go see the solar eclipse up in New York. So those were some of the, and then the last procedural thing that we needed to do is, every year, if you're a senior and you meet certain qualifications, you can apply for a certain amount of a tax exemption. The qualifications are individual seniors living under $30,000 a year adjusted income, or couples under 35, and you can have up to $30,000 of your home's assessment value waived. So every year we have people who apply for that, and then we have to approve a formal list of people who have applied for and meet those qualifications for that waiver. It's a a procedural thing. A question did come up from the community about whether or not those limitations, those requirements, and how much we waive would be updated once the new assessments are done. So we are able to waive a certain amount of the assessment for the town of Smyrna, not for anybody else, not for Kent County, and that's where school taxes and things come in, just the town's taxes in the purview of the city council. But that is something that we will have to look at as we do updating on assessments, is whether or not those numbers, those limitations are the right thing. And it's something that we can look at every year. I'm going to talk more about assessment stuff here in just a minute. Then on some of the other pieces, we had the Smyrna School District actually came to the town. Everyone pretty much knows they went out for a referendum and weren't able to get enough votes for that referendum. It had two big parts to it. One was around capital funding for school buildings, and another one was around operating funding. The capital funding for school business is one that we hear a lot about at the town hall, because there's always questions about why is it that people in the community are asked to pay the cost to build new school buildings when it's really people moving to the community that cause the schools to grow. So the town has some limited role in this, and mostly it is in that we collect a school impact fee when a new building is built in the town. That impact fee is something that we just pass through. The rate was set 20 plus years ago. No one can really remember how it was set, why it was set where it is, but it runs, I believe it's 5/8 of 1% of the construction value of a property. It has not been updated in at least 20 years as far as we can tell. The school district has not come to the town to request that is updated. It is really the school district's impact fee. We are the pass-through. So they came last night to begin the discussion that they would like to have that fee updated. What they will need to do is contract with a firm that does this. There's a couple of them nationally, one of which we've used in Smyrna before, and we've used, and it does a bit of work in Delaware. They will actually then go off, conduct the study, and propose an impact fee rate that ultimately would come to the town of Smyrna, and the town of Smyrna would need to adopt that impact fee rate. We've actually done the exact same thing we started last year with the fire and ambulance, that they wanted to make sure that their impact fees were adjusted, were defensible, and were at the right level to meet the potential impact on their capital needs for the community as it grows. Certainly Smyrna School District's a lot bigger than the town of Smyrna, so they're going to be having these same conversations with Clayton, and then there's the broader county, which the school district certainly serves, that doesn't have an impact fee like this. So it will be interesting sort of how it plays out, but the town of Smyrna council members were open and willing to consider it. Certainly we heard from members of the community that think this is a really good idea. We ought to be making sure that those impact fees better represent the cost of construction for new school buildings. Certainly they're a lot more expensive than they would have been 20 years ago. So there wasn't a vote or anything. This was more of a conversation for the school district to understand that, were they to undertake this study, which will be, expensive. It costs them a few $1,000s, $10,000, $12,000, something like that probably. Maybe more, I don't know. That ultimately when they bring those impact fee numbers to the town would be willing to consider and hopefully adopt them. And there was that willingness from the town council members to consider that, and the school district will go off. I'm sure we'll get more updates as to when they're going to update the things, when they've gotten their study going, and those things along the way. We had a second reading of an ordinance to amend our Chapter 18 regarding building or vacant property fees. This is something that the town collects from properties that are sitting empty. They are a source of blight and economic drain on our community. Some property owners just don't care. And so we have a fee that we associate with that. That fee, when we collect it, the town actually passes it through to the Smyrna Slum Clearance and Redevelopment Authority. This is an entity that the town created more than a decade ago to make investments in properties in town. If you live downtown or in our redevelopment area, and you might have seen stuff around getting a facade grant if you're going to make an improvement to the facade of your home. That's mostly where these funds go, is to making those facade grants. It is every year we collect these funds, and every year we've had to vote to then send the funds over to the SDRA. This ordinance basically just streamlines that. As the funds are collected, I figure if it's a monthly or a quarterly basis, they're then just going to be sent over to the SDRA, so that they have, or the RDA, sorry, not the SDRA. Similar acronyms, different organizations. So this is the second reading. There will be a third reading of it before it is formally adopted and put into the town code. One of the big conversations, and this sort of plays into why I'm down in Dover today, is we got an update and got a chance to ask questions and have a conversation regarding the reassessment that's going on in Kent County and the potential impact that could have on Smyrna's assessments. So most folks know this. Kent County, like every county in the state, is having to redo their property assessments. In Kent County, they have not been updated since 1987, meaning that the property value assigned to a building is based on what its sale value would have been in 1987. It's obviously not 1987. I think my house has a sale value of like $31,000 is what it would have been in 1987. Certainly not accurate for 2024. By not updating that, you create lots of inequality. Some properties are assessed higher than they should be, some are assessed lower than they should be, and there are a lot of potential issues. So a state lawsuit mandated the counties redo those assessments. Well, municipalities, and not all of them, but certainly a few of them, also have our own assessments. So the town of Smyrna contracted back in the early aughts, I believe it was 2006, to do an assessment for the town of Smyrna. That is the value, so the property value as they would have been determined in 2006 is what we use to set our tax rate. It's expensive to update an assessment. It's the reason why the counties haven't done it in at least one case greater than 40 years. The town of Smyrna is coming up on 20 years since we've done a reassessment, and the question was raised a couple of meetings ago of, should we adopt what Kent County is doing, because one, all that money is being spent by somebody else, and the state now requires them to update that assessment every 5 years, so it will be much more current. It would cost us roughly, they estimated, somewhere in the $400,000-ish to update Smyrna's assessment, and would likely result in very much the same numbers that Kent County has. And then if we wanted to update it again in 5 years, it would be a similar amount of money. In all likelihood, most of the small municipalities that have their own current assessment that haven't updated theirs on their own will probably want to adopt what the county does. Now, it's tricky for us because we have both Newcastle and Kent counties, and they're not on the same timeline. Kent County's reassessment will be done this year. Newcastle County's not till next year. So technically, the property values that are set will be a little bit different, but they will be remarkably closer and much more accurate than Kent County's assessment, Newcastle County's assessment, or the town of Smyrna's existing one. We haven't moved on this. It's probably something that's at least a year away, if not more than a year away. But we wanted to gain more information from Tyler Technologies. They're the company that has been contracted by all three counties to do this reassessment process. This is a big issue, lots and lots of questions and a lot of unknowns, which brings me to why I am at the Kent County levy court offices right now. about a month or two ago, Kent County reached out to try and find people who wanted to serve as hearing officers, people who would help to hear requests to make changes to their proposed new county assessments. And I sat and I thought, well, this sounds actually like a really great opportunity. They're going to give a whole week of training on how assessments work, how the reassessment process works, what is and isn't considered in an assessment. A lot of the questions that honestly I don't know, and in conversations I've had with lots of people in town, they don't know either. So I signed up for it, got picked, and I'm going to be down here for an entire week, 5 days. Tyler Technologies is training us. There's about 20 people here. They're from all over the county, some other elected officials, people who are in positions where they're getting these kind of questions as well, and they want to learn about it, and they want to play an active role in making sure that the citizens of our county have a fair opportunity to have their voice heard, should they disagree with the assessment amount that has been sent out in those letters to us. We're about halfway through the second day of training. The first day of training was really kind of a lot of information about what the assessment process has looked like, what goes into calculating an assessment. It's different than some models. Each county sort of crafts a model that's kind of uniquely its own. What they're using for all of these reassessments is what's called a market value, which is looking at comparable sales, the same way an appraisal is done, sort of, where they would look at comparable sales and then set a value off of that. But some of those are relatively straightforward. If you live in a neighborhood where, like a development and there's lots of sales all the time, it's pretty easy to predict what your house is worth. If you have a very unique property, or you're a commercial property or things like that, it can be a lot trickier to find those comps that can be used to help establish the value. And so we're learning a lot about what that process looks like, how to go about looking at helping review data and understand what is and isn't a valid argument against an assessment. We're going to be here for 5 days, so today we just started doing some looking at actual appeals that people have submitted, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about each one of those and looking at unique features of those so that we can understand what should you consider, what should you look for, what questions should you ask as part of this process. We want to make sure that everybody is paying a fair amount. If one person's is dramatically lower than it should be, it means other people's are higher than they should be. It's a zero-sum game. Everything's got to turn out to the same amount of money that the county can bring in. This would be the same for the town of Smyrna. So when one person is low, that means other people are high. It seems like it's going to be pretty neat. Like I said, we'll be here for 5 days, and then Kent County's appeal process closes, I believe it's the 28th is the last day that you can submit to have a formal appeal for the assessed value from the letter that was sent out to everybody. And then over the course of April and May, there will be these hearings, and we'll be selected and asked to come in and sit and be a hearing officer at a number of those over the next couple of months. By June, that is all supposed to be done. The final appeals are supposed to be done, and ultimately, I believe it is by the beginning of July, Kent County is supposed to set its formal tax rate for this year. So long process, but gaining a ton of information already on what this looks like, and trying to figure out how we take that back and use it in considering what it is that we might like to do in the town of Smyrna for our citizens and for our municipal tax rate. So that's about all I've got. I mentioned we'll be talking more about the budget. I believe we're trying to set a budget meeting for next Tuesday evening, a special meeting to, again, spend another workshop talking about it. I will tell you, it has been a very, very long and amazingly frustrating process, seeing all the things that are wrong and have been done very wrong in some of the town finances for potentially decades. and trying to fix a lot of those sort of things, also realizing that it's a constant moving target. And I keep telling myself we have to get something that's good, that we can build on, we need to make progress, but it's not going to be perfect. So I plan on doing, like I said, a much longer discussion about that. And hopefully, we keep talking that the town council should do some public meetings to sit down and try and explain some of this stuff a little bit better, because there will be a financial impact, short-term and long-term financial impacts on the community that come out of a lot of these conversations. So, sorry to end on a down note. We'll be having that meeting next week, and then the first council meeting of April is, I actually believe, April 1st. So good old April Fool's Day council meeting. If you have any questions, if you need me, you can always reach out. I try and be as responsive as I can. Thank you, and back into training.